Hello, it's Alex, the Bookubus. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in September. I ended up reading 13 books in total, but a lot of them were really short ones, so yeah, that's probably why I read so much number-wise. And yeah, it feels like it's been a while since I've filmed anything, so I'm feeling a little bit discombobulated. My last two videos, my October TBR and my October watch list, I actually filmed probably like a month ago, because I actually recently went on holiday, my first one in like over 4 years, so it's been a while. And yeah, my husband and I went back to the UK for just over 2 weeks to see my mum and my sister, and we all had an amazing time. It was, yeah, just the best seeing them and getting to spend time together, and yeah, we had lots of adventures. It was super fun, and yeah, sad to have to leave, but yeah, happy to be home as well, I guess. So we just got back a few days ago, and yeah, that's why my September wrap-up is halfway through October. Normally I would have maybe gotten to it a bit earlier in the month. But anyway, yeah, onto the books. I'm just going to talk about them in the order that I read them. And they're a bit of a mixed bag, a bit all over the place. There was one book that I DNF'd. There was one book that was a 2-star read. But there were also a bunch of books that I thoroughly enjoyed and would highly recommend. So at least there's that to balance it out. So first up, I read Bad Movie Night by Patrick Lacey. I did receive a copy of this from the author, and this is a novella about a guy who is part of a friend group who run a YouTube channel where they talk about kind of hidden gem horror films and stuff. Yeah, you're kind of, you know, so bad it's good kind of films. They're always looking to find, you know, some really obscure stuff that people have never heard of. And yeah, they end up watching this one film that might be cursed. So yeah, I went into this expecting it to be just a kind of like a fun, you know, a bit of a romp about, you know, this cursed film and just horror movies in general. And, you know, part of it is, yeah, a love letter to horror and obscure films and the people that like digging to find, you know, these hidden gems. But there's also a serious and emotional element to the story about something that happened to the main character and some trauma that he is dealing with, and how watching this cursed film kind of leads him down a bit of a downward spiral emotionally and mentally. So yeah, was not expecting that from it, but I thought it was really well written. This is my first time reading Patrick Lacey, but it was a great introduction to his work. I really enjoyed this one. It would be perfect, yeah, for the spooky season. And yeah, I really look forward to reading more of his work now that I have checked this one out. I rated this one 4 stars. Next up, I read New Millennium Boys by Alex Kazemi. This is another one that I received an advance copy of through the publisher. They contacted me to see if I'd be interested. And this is about a teenage boy. It's set in like 1999, 2000. It's kind of described as a post-Columbine coming of age story about this wealthy kid that kind of meets this guy who's into like maybe Satan worship and stuff, and he kind of like gets led down this dark path. Definitely sounded like my cup of tea, but sadly this one just didn't really do much for me. This is the one I ended up rating 2 stars, so it was, yeah, unfortunately my least favourite of the month, I guess, other than the one I DNF'd, which I have yet to talk about. But I probably should have DNF'd this one because it just wasn't working for me. But because I had received a copy for review, I wanted to, yeah, give it my time and be able to give an opinion on it. So one of the issues I had with this is that it's incredibly dialogue heavy. Like, I would say the vast majority of this book is dialogue, and like, it's just kind of like rambling. There's not really any points to a lot of it. The plot definitely takes a big backseat to vibes, I guess, is what was maybe the aim here. And yeah, it's teenage boys just talking shit for a lot of it, and a lot of it is, yeah, very misogynistic, homophobic, racist, etc. And, you know, it's setting the scene, it's setting the time period, I get it, but it was just relentless. Like, it was just really obnoxious, and I just had a hard time reading it because it was so repetitive and there was like nothing happening plot-wise. I think this one did get interesting towards the end when some plot actually kicked in, but it was a bit kind of too little too late for me. I thought the Columbine element of the story was not nearly as kind of big as I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be very focused on that, but it just seemed to be a small element in the book. And it also felt pretty surface level as well. I think generally, you know, this has something to say about, yeah, the struggles of being a teenager, but I didn't really relate it specifically to the time period of the 90s that it's set in, or, yeah, the kind of post-Columbine, you know, world that it was, you know, supposedly referencing. And yeah, with the 90s setting, yeah, it throws like 90s references at you constantly. There's, yeah, songs mentioned, bands, films, TV, actors, foods and drinks, like just everything you could possibly think of that might have existed in the 90s is kind of, you're bombarded with it in this book. And I mean, I think that was the point, but it did get a bit much for me at times when I'm like, yeah, we get it. Oh, the other thing I did want to mention about this though is that it definitely seemed, in my opinion at least, to be inspired by the film Black Circle Boys, which is itself inspired by a real story of Ricky Kasso. If you haven't heard of Ricky Kasso, you can look him up. But yeah, basically he was someone that got into drugs and supposedly, you know, devil worship or something, and then killed someone. And yeah, Black Circle Boys is a film kind of based on that. The film is mentioned a couple of times in New Millennium Boys, and I definitely found that there were some similarities between the two about this main character who is kind of being led astray by this character who is already on like a dark path or whatever. The other thing that I thought was similar is that in the film and this book, there's a bit of a like manic pixie dream girl character. I thought they were pretty similar. Anyway, just something that stuck out to me a bit. Maybe it's just coincidence, but yeah. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on too much about this one. It just wasn't really for me. This does have a lot of good reviews on Goodreads, so I guess, you know, make of that what you will. But I gave this one a solid chance, and yeah, just ended up being a 2-star read for me. Next up, I read House of Rot by Danger Slater. I read this as a buddy read with my friend Emily, and we both loved this one. This is a novella, it's pretty short, about a couple who move into an apartment that they think is, you know, going to be perfect for them, but they end up getting trapped in there and the place is rotting. So yeah, an interesting premise and really well done. The only other book of Danger Slater's I had read before this was I Will Rot Without You, so there's definitely a rot theme, which I'm not mad about. But yeah, they both are definitely their own stories, but I think similarity-wise is that the combination of, you know, serious emotional elements along with the bizarro and humorous elements, yeah, he does such a fantastic job with that. And yeah, this one was just a really excellent read. There were times that I laughed out loud, and there were times when I slipped into an existential crisis. So what more could you want from a book, really? And it definitely has a lot to say beyond just, you know, a bizarro idea of your house rotting, you know. So if you're looking for an interesting and unique read, I would highly recommend this one. I gave this one 4 stars. Next up, I read Poking Holes by Juan Valencia. You might have heard of him, and if not, you should check out his channel Plagued by Visions. And yeah, I've had this on my shelf for a little while. Juan actually very kindly sent me this copy, so thank you very much. And yeah, I got around to picking it up in September and thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, there is always that trepidation when you read something by a friend because you're like, well, I don't want to hate it. Like, what do I do if I think it sucks? But thankfully, he is incredibly talented, which I knew already. But yeah, this was a really excellent short story collection. Lots of dark and disturbing content here. And yeah, probably look up some trigger warnings beforehand if you think you need to. But yeah, I was very impressed by this collection and his writing style. Yeah, the stories in here go to some places. And yeah, round of applause really for this collection. I think he did such an excellent job with it, and I really look forward to seeing what he does next, which I believe he has a novella coming out, hopefully this year. So eyes peeled for that. Whenever it is available, I'm going to jump on it. But yeah, this was another 4-star read for me and highly recommend it if you haven't yet picked up a copy. Next, I picked up Second Sight by Cecilia Bartholomew. This originally came out, let me check, in 1980, it looks like. And great cover, obviously. I've had this sitting on my shelf for quite a few years, and I picked it as one of my 23 books to read in 2023. So finally got around to picking it up, and sadly this was a DNF for me. The premise is about a woman. She used to be a model, but she ends up having some like degeneration with her eyesight, and she goes blind. So she is adjusting to this new life with her blindness, and she ends up moving into an apartment, and there's a woman with a kid who lives in the building, and then this kind of bohemian musician type that lives in the building too. So she's starting to get to know them, and I got maybe like a third of the way into this, I think, but it was just not really much was happening. A lot of it was very in her head, and it just got quite repetitive and drawn out, and I just figured, you know what, I'm going to put it down and move on to something else. So sorry, Cecilia Bartholomew, great name and great cover of this book, but yeah, if anyone has read this and thought it was good, then maybe I'll give it another chance. Next up, thankfully, things got back on track with Rites of Extinction by Matt Serafini. This was another one like Patrick Lacey that it was my first time reading them. You know, I've heard of them over the past few years. They're both indie authors who, you know, I've seen various books of theirs pop up on BookTube and Instagram and such like, and I've always been curious to read them. But anyway, only just gotten around to it, late to the party, but better late than never. This is something of a folk horror story about a woman who is avenging her daughter's death. She is like a private investigator, and she's trying to track down this guy, and she ends up going to this small town and learning about some things that happened there, some murders that happened there, and she's trying to track this guy down. So yeah, a pretty simple premise, but I was really blown away by his writing, and yeah, some of the details and descriptions here were just really fantastic. This is another novella, so yeah, not a long read, but there was so much packed into it. Lots of tension and some really, kind of gruesome and disturbing scenes, which were really good. Yeah, this was just another one that I was really impressed by. You know, I was looking forward to it, but it exceeded my expectations, I guess. And again, looking forward to reading more by this author. But yeah, this was another 4-star read for me. Definitely recommend it. It would be, also another one that's perfect for this time of year, with it being the spookiest season. I'm going to flip-flop some of my reads here just because I ended up reading some Halloween-y books, so I'll just group all of those together at the end. But that means that next one I'm going to talk about is Burning by Jane Chambers. It's described on the back as a lesbian gothic suspense novel, and I think that sums it up pretty nicely. This one came out in the 70s, I believe. Originally 78. This edition was 1983, and this is about a woman and her kids and their kind of nanny. They go on a vacation to this kind of old house in New England, and the woman's husband is going to be joining them in a few days. But the story focuses on the time before he does so. And yeah, this is, your quiet, slow burn kind of horror story. And yeah, there is a big witchcraft theme to the story. Basically, once the main character and the nanny move into this house, they start to experience things that happened to these two women who lived there when the witch hunts were happening. And these two women had a lesbian relationship, and yeah, so there's a big theme of persecution and witch hunts relating to that period and also in the present day, and yeah, how gay people can also be persecuted in a similar fashion. And yeah, this was really touching. It got emotional, it got intense towards the end, it made me angry. Yeah, it's very fuck the patriarchy, and I just thought this was a really great read. It is, a bit slow. There's a lot of, character study type stuff and character development, and the conflict that is going on when these two women in the present day start to experience these things that happened in the past. That brings up, a lot of issues that they are dealing with as well. So I thought it did that really well. It was an interesting concept. And yeah, unfortunately this one is a bit of a hard one to track down. I ended up getting a really good deal on this particular copy on eBay a while ago. So if you're looking for it, put it in your eBay watch list or something, and when a decently priced copy comes up, jump on it. This was another 4-star read for me this month, and yeah, another excellent read that I would highly recommend. And moving on to something completely different, I read another Danger Slater book, Double Danger. This one is Little Miss Apocalypse, and I also read this with my friend Emily, and we had a great time with this one too. So this one is more just leaning into fun and wacky bizarro. It's very funny and just bonkers. Had a great time with it. This is about a teenage girl. She is looking forward to prom and she has a big crush on this popular guy at school, and basically she has a missile in her vagina that she doesn't know about, and when she has her first kiss, the world is probably going to end because this missile will detonate. So yeah, loved the premise. I saw someone's review that described it as a mashup of John Hughes and John Waters, and I think that's pretty spot on. This is another, very short read. Flew through it. It made me laugh a lot. Very humorous and witty. The main character was a lot of fun to read about and follow her crazy journey. And there's a character called Stevius who is the best. And this was just a ton of fun. Yeah, if you're looking for just a super quick read that's going to make you laugh and maybe gross you out a little bit and just have a really good time with, then I highly recommend this one. This was another 4-star read for me this month. Okay, now moving on to some Halloween-y books. So I was, starting to get into the spirit, and I found a few non-fiction books in my library system, which I requested. So there were 3 books in total. One of them was called Folk Art Halloween by Bethany Lowe. And this is like a crafty book, so it has craft and art projects that are Halloween themed in it. I thought this one was really good for the inspiration. But I think as an actual craft book, I thought it was a bit lacking. Most of the projects only had a picture of the final product. And I think, while it had the how-to instructions, it would have been better, I think, if it had more photos to, illustrate a bit better how you get from point A to point B, rather than, just here's what you're meant to come up with at the end. But like I say, lots of interesting looking projects and strong Halloween vibes, and good inspiration if you're looking to get crafty this season. Another one that I read was called Halloween by Silver Ravenwolf, and this is more of a kind of broader book about Halloween in general, the history of Halloween through to, how people celebrate it today, or at least when the book came out, which I think was probably in the 90s. And then it also has a witchcraft Wicca element to the book with like recipes and spells and such like. And I'll be honest, this one I didn't read cover to cover, I just kind of flipped through it a bit, and yeah, I thought it was an interesting read. And I think one of the things, if I was going to use this for any of the recipes, it didn't have any pictures of the final product even. Like, I mean, I don't need a step-by-step for recipes, but I at least want to know what it is I'm supposed to be aiming for at the end. Anyway, that's just me. That's just a pet peeve of mine, I guess, with recipe books. But yeah, this had a lot of information in there. Like I said, it was quite an amalgamation of Halloween related stuff in one book. And if you are into Wicca, then this might be one you want to check out. So yeah, this was a bit of a mixed bag for me, just in the content and kind of presentation of it, but an interesting read nonetheless. And then the third one that I read was called Halloween: Romantic Art and Customs of Yesteryear by Diane C. Arkins. And this was my favourite of the three. So this is focused on about 100 years ago, basically, and how Halloween was celebrated in the US at that point. It does talk a little bit about the history of Halloween and how it kind of came to be celebrated in the US. And then, yeah, it has just a really great collection of vintage illustrations from like greetings cards and postcards and stuff, and some things from magazines. Yeah, so really great collection of that kind of thing, and yeah, very strong Halloween vibes and inspiration. And then it also has a lot of, yeah, just interesting information about that time period. And yeah, what I don't think I realised was that, you know, that Halloween celebrations around 100 years ago, a lot of it was related to romance, like you would maybe think of Valentine's Day for. But yeah, there was a lot of kind of fortune telling and parlour games and stuff like that that were kind of romance related, about like, you know, if you look in a mirror at midnight and you'll see the reflection of your true love, that kind of thing. So yeah, the author had, you know, collected a lot of really great information related to that. Some of it did get a bit repetitive because it was just kind of different iterations of the same game or fortune telling thing, just from, you know, different sources. But yeah, overall this was a really interesting read, and yeah, really enjoyed the Halloweeniness of it. I do love vintage Halloween illustrations, so yeah, would highly recommend this one. This was my favourite of those three non-fiction books that I read. Okay, two more books to talk about. I'm starting to lose my voice. But these are two that were on my October TBR, but I did say that it was a bit ambitious and that I was probably going to start in September. So I did, because I just couldn't wait to dive into my TBR basically. So the first one I read was The Autumnal by Daniel Kraus, Chris Sheehan, Jason Wordy and Jim Campbell. This is a graphic novel, and I read the whole thing in one edition that I was able to get from my library, and I'm very glad I was able to get my hands on it. Yeah, beautiful artwork, and yeah, a kind of folk horror type of story. Yeah, obviously it's not called Autumnal for nothing. It's set in autumn, and yeah, so feeling Halloweeny and autumnal and everything. This is about a woman who, her mother dies, and so she ends up moving back to her hometown, which she hasn't been to in many years. There's her and her young daughter that move there, and yeah, she's starting to uncover things from her past related to, yeah, this small town that they lived in. Yeah, don't want to say too much more about it. Yeah, some of it was a bit tropey, but I still think it made for an interesting and compelling story. And yeah, I loved the artwork, and yeah, I liked the direction the story went, and the ending was great. So yeah, if you're looking for a quick read for the spooky season, this would be another great recommendation. Yeah, this was another 4-star read for me this month. So yeah, while I did have a couple of blips, I actually did have a lot of 4-star reads. So yeah, can't complain. And then last up, I read The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. This is quite a biggish one. I think it's over 500 pages long, and it's one I've been meaning to read for years but have been putting off. But this was another one on my 23 books in 2023. So yeah, I definitely wanted to make a point of getting to it before the year is out. So I'm glad I did. This one did end up being a 3-star read for me. This is set in post-war England, and we're following a doctor, Dr. Faraday, and a family called the Ayrses who live in this big mansion. But the family has kind of fallen on hard times, and the mansion is, starting to deteriorate around them. And anyway, the doctor and this family start kind of seeing more of each other and, forming a kind of a bit of a relationship there. And as this is going on, there are some potentially spooky things that happen in the mansion. So I think the big problem for me with this one is that it is very slow. Like, the spooky stuff doesn't really come in till quite far into the book. And when it does happen, I thought some of it was interesting. But after a while, I don't know, I just don't think it really worked. So the bulk of the story is, focused on Dr. Faraday and the kind of the developing relationship between him and this family, specifically the daughter of the family. And I did really like the writing style. It definitely felt like it captured the time period. And there were a lot of great details and descriptions that really kind of set the scene and made everything feel believable. And the characters I thought were all really well done. But a lot of it is just, you're following these characters and their day-to-day lives and things that happen between them, which is fine. And some of it was interesting, but some of it just kind of didn't really keep my attention as much as it could have done, because it is quite long. I think this could definitely have been cut down quite drastically and still kept the main elements of the story. But I think as a ghost story, I found this one very lacking. I wouldn't class this one as horror. I would class this one more as historical fiction primarily, but with a bit of a supernatural element. So if that still sounds interesting to you, then I would recommend it. It was a bit of a mixed reading experience for me though, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. Okay, and that is everything I read in September. I read quite a lot and I feel like I've been talking forever, so I will wrap this up. But let me know if you've read any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts, or let me know what you read in September, if you had any particular favourites. And I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all having a wonderful October so far. Have you got any plans for the season or for Halloween itself? I would love to hear about it. And I haven't actually put my Halloween decorations up yet, but I'm hoping that that's going to happen today. Because we were away. It's happening later than planned, but better late than never. So I'm excited to dive into all of our Halloween decorations and put some up this afternoon. But anyway, I digress. I was going to wrap this up quickly, wasn't I? Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video.